Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 330. Happy Friday. Hope you guys have had a good week. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great podcast for you today. Today, we're going to talk about a subject that I've been talking about for nearly a decade. And the topic of today's podcast is Obamagate. The title of this podcast will not be Obamagate because I've already done a podcast that I've titled Obamagate. And like I said, I've been talking about this for nearly a decade now. If you're new to this podcast, I'll tell you, I'm not a fan of Barack Obama. I voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and immediately, even before he was sworn in, I regretted my vote. I knew that I had been had. I knew that I had been conned by the cabinet that he was putting together. The fact that he was keeping George H.W. Bush's former CIA director, the guy who ran Iran-Contra, keeping him on as the head of the Pentagon, the Secretary of Defense. The fact that he was running against Hillary Clinton and had all these negative things to say about Hillary Clinton while he was running against her in the primary, but then he makes her the Secretary of State. He makes Timothy Geithner, the guy who we were in the middle of this financial crisis in 2008, and he makes Timothy Geithner, a guy who sets up the crash, his Treasury Secretary, and his chief economic advisor was Larry Summers. I mean, I didn't even need him to be sworn in. When he starts putting together his team, I knew that I'd been had. And since then, I don't like Barack Obama. I can't stand this guy. He is a very scandalous person, and we're going to get into the scandal of Obamagate today and the accusations that Tulsi Gabbard has been making about Obama and the documents that she has been declassifying that supports what she is saying. But what you need to understand, because we've been talking a lot about Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein scandal, and what you need to understand is that the Obamagate scandal and the Epstein scandal are the same scandals. They're the same scandals because what they deal with is a rogue intelligence community, and that's what we're dealing with. We have a rogue intelligence community in the United States, a very powerful intelligence community that is not looking out for the best interests of the American people. They have convinced us that we need them, that the intelligence community is important to keeping us safe, and the intelligence community protects us from foreign threats. Well, who protects us from the intelligence community? The domestic threats. Because when you take your oath of office, it says to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So who is protecting us from the intelligence community? And we're going to get in that today. But you need to understand that the Epstein scandal and the Obamagate scandal are the same scandals. And this is a scandal of our intelligence community. And this is a problem with rogue actors within our intelligence community, and they're the same scandals: the Epstein scandal and the Obamagate scandal. Now, the Democrats, they are seizing on the missteps that President Trump has made in this Epstein scandal, the giving these influencers these stupid binders, phase 1 binders and all that stuff. Those are huge missteps that were made by the Trump administration. And the Democrats are seizing on that. And they're saying that, that we are for the average, everyday middle class, Americans, and Trump is protecting the elite, and we support, the working class, and this is evidence that we support the working class because we want these Epstein files. We are making every effort to get the Epstein files, and the Republicans are blocking us from getting the Epstein files. And this demonstrates that we're working for you, the middle class, and for workers. Well, the Democrats were in charge from 2021 to 2023. And they weren't trying to get the Epstein files when they were in charge. As a matter of fact, like I was explaining in the last podcast, in the Judiciary Committee, in the Senate Judiciary Committee headed by Dirty Dick Durbin, Marsha Blackburn, senator from Tennessee, was trying to subpoena the Epstein files, the unredacted Epstein files, and Dick Durbin blocked her. You didn't hear any Democrats. I challenge you to find me any Democrat that said anything about the Epstein files prior to a few weeks ago when this became a scandal. But now they're saying that we're going after the Epstein files because we're for the average American, and this is proof that we're for the average American, that we're going after the Epstein files, and the Republicans are protecting the elite, is the narrative that they are saying now. Now, yesterday, tons of Democrats they posted this graph, and this is one of the biggest self-owns that I have seen in a long time. And this graph, if you look at it, it says U.S. grocery prices reached record highs in 2025. Prices are higher today than they were on July 2024. All major categories listed below. And I don't know who was first to post this, but all the there's Democrat members of Congress that still have this graph on their social media accounts. And this is a complete self-own. You'll see the dates down here. It starts October 2019, October 2020. This is when Trump was president. And then you'll see that this inflation shoots up in October of 2021. This is when Biden becomes president. The very first thing that Democrats do without a single Republican vote, they pass $1.9 trillion in stimulus. And then a year later, they pass another $1 trillion in stimulus. And with the Inflation Reduction Act, after they created the inflation, and they did both of these bills that equaled over $3 trillion in stimulus in 2 years without a single Republican vote. Kamala Harris had to come in and break the tie to pass these two stimulus packages that equaled over $3 trillion in stimulus in 2 years. 2 years they added $3 trillion to the national debt. Now, the narrative around the big, beautiful bill, this bill that the Republicans just passed and Trump signed, the CBO is projecting that it's going to add $3 trillion over 10 years. And that's a projection. Could be less, could be more. CBO's been wrong before, but that's over 10 years and it's a projection. Democrats, they added real, not projection, they added real $3 trillion to the national debt in 2 years with their two stimulus packages. And you'll see that the inflation started to shoot up under the Biden administration. This is Trump's first term. The inflation shoots up. 2025 isn't even on this graph that they're all sharing. So they're telling you that we're for the working class, that we're, fighting for you because we're trying to get the Epstein file. What are you guys talking about? Look at what you did to working families. Look at what you did to the average everyday Americans with this inflation that you created when you were in charge. And you weren't trying to get the Epstein files when you were in charge. I mean, these people are, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Democrats are not for average everyday workers. They're not for middle-class Americans. They're not. And them, trying to use this Epstein issue to say that we are for the middle class because we're trying to go out and get the Epstein files. Well, why weren't you trying to get the Epstein files in Biden's first 2 years? We've talked about that. So let's get into Obamagate. And again, I reiterate that the Obamagate scandal is the same thing as the Epstein scandal. This is all part of a rogue intelligence community in the United States, namely the CIA and namely the FBI. Now, so Obamagate starts with what we call Spygate first. And if you remember in Donald Trump's first term, after he gave his first speech to a joint session of Congress, the very next day, the New York Times puts out an article saying that Jeff Sessions, who was Donald Trump's then attorney general, that he had met with the Russians. He met with the Russians, and that he conspired with the Russians in rigging the election, and that started the scandal that was known as Spygate. And a few days later, Donald Trump, after this article comes out in the New York Times accusing Jeff Sessions, the attorney general, of meeting with the Russians, Donald Trump goes to Twitter and he tweets out this message. Terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism. And everyone was like, this is an insane accusation that the president of the United States is accusing the former president of spying on him. And then this became known as Spygate. And I want you to listen to Stephen Colbert here, and he does his monologue shortly after Donald Trump puts out this tweet accusing President Obama's administration on spying on his campaign and on spying on him leading up to the election, after the election, and even after Trump was sworn in. They were still spying on him. Let's listen to Stephen Colbert here.
The world. Here, get into this industrial dryer and we'll throw in a couple of fluorescent tubes with you. Here, enjoy it. For those of you who missed it, Saturday morning, while Trump was in Florida, out of nowhere, he tweeted, "Terrible, just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism." And just like that, the White House had to reset their sign back to zero. He just sets it like that. So sad.
Hang him with a nail.
They gotten up to like 5 days.
It's a wonder this guy,
like
they canceled this guy's show.
And this tweet, this accusation, this tweet was sent at 6:35 a.m. Who wakes up that angry? That's furious. Somebody give this guy a Xanax or a bran muffin. Or a bran muffin just stuffed with Xanax, like a Branax or something. Next, he tweeted, "How low has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very..."
It's funny, listen to everybody laughing.
Process. This is Nixon/Watergate. Wait, you just said it was McCarthyism. Now it's Nixon-Watergate? Pick your historical analogy. This is the Pearl Harbor of Hindenburg, Great Depression, D-Days, finale of Lost.
Who finds this funny? Who finds this stuff funny?
And he must have been really proud of this tweet because it's the first time he ever signed one. Bad or sick guy. Couldn't have said it better myself, sir. This is a serious allegation. This might be the most serious allegation any president has made against a previous president.
This is a serious allegation. This may be the most serious allegation that a president has made against a previous president. Well, it turns out that Obama's administration was spying on Donald Trump. And everything that Trump tweets that this guy's making fun of and everyone's laughing at was true. That the Obama administration was spying on Trump. They were spying on his campaign. They were spying on him, leading up to him being sworn in, and spying on him even after he was sworn in. And that's how the New York Times knew that Jeff Sessions was meeting with the Russian ambassador. Like, as senator, Jeff Sessions not supposed to meet with foreign ambassadors? I mean, come on. So it's no scandal. But this led to the special counsel investigation, which lasted for 2 years. And we called this Spygate. At this time, the Republicans controlled the House of Representatives. The head of the House Intelligence Committee was Devin Nunes. Devin Nunes works to declassify the document that showed that they had got FISA warrants on Carter Page and that they were spying on the Trump campaign, and everything was true. Even though, so this is what Stephen Colbert and everyone was saying when Trump tweets this out, is that this is a crazy accusation. I can't believe that the president is making this accusation, and the accusation turned out to be true, that the Obama administration was spying on Trump. Today, with Tulsi Gabbard coming out with the accusations that she's making, everyone's saying the same thing. These are wild accusations. I can't believe that the Trump administration is making these accusations against Obama. But the accusations, just like the accusations that Obama had spied on Trump, the accusations that Tulsi Gabbard and the Trump administration are making about Obama today are true. So this was known as Spygate. And then Spygate, it started with Russiagate because WikiLeaks leaked the emails from the DNC, from John Podesta, all that in July of 2016. So that started Russiagate. And then when we found out about the spying and the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, that became Spygate. And I've been saying for nearly a decade now that both Russiagate and Spygate are Obamagate. And that's what we're going to get into today, Obamagate. And what I'm telling you is that Obamagate and the Epstein investigation and the Epstein scandal, they're the same scandal. They're the same scandal. So let's talk about Robert Mueller. In 2005, when Epstein was arrested for the first time, Robert Mueller was the director of the FBI. What you got to understand about Robert Mueller, he became director of the FBI just a few days before the 9/11 attacks. The head of the FBI leading up to the 9/11 attacks was this guy, Louis Freeh. And Louis Freeh resigns in June of 2021. The 9/11 attacks happened in September. Louis Freeh just suddenly, they're supposed to serve for 10 years. He served from 1993, you can see here, to 2001. So he still had 2 years on his 10-year term as the director of the FBI. So Louis Freeh, out of nowhere, just resigns, June, July, August, September. So 3 months before the September 11 attacks, Louis Freeh just resigns. And then Robert Mueller, you have this guy is the interim director of FBI, and then Robert Mueller becomes the director of the FBI just a few weeks before 9/11. Robert Mueller comes in to cover up for the intelligence failures, if you want to call them intelligence failures, that were pre-9/11. So Louis Freeh wasn't there to answer the questions about what happened with the pre-9/11 intelligence, all these things that you guys missed at the FBI. Mueller comes in and he gets to say that I wasn't here, you know? Louis Freeh was the director, and then I don't know what happened, missing all these warnings prior to 9/11. So Mueller is a cleanup man. He comes in as director of FBI as a cleanup man, and he's the director of FBI when Jeffrey Epstein is arrested in 2005. It says here that these are the presidents that Mueller worked under: George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama. Those are the presidents that the cleanup man, Robert Mueller, worked under. And when Epstein was arrested in 2005, this guy was the director of FBI. Who was one of his deputies? This guy. James Comey was one of Mueller's deputies at the FBI when Epstein is arrested in 2005. We talked in a podcast a few weeks ago about the open investigation in Comey and in Brennan, and that everyone was speculating, what could this investigation be about? Because the statute of limitations is up on all these crimes that happened in 2016. What could they be investigating about? Well, we know what they're being investigated about now. They're being investigated for treason, and there's no statute of limitations for treason. So James Comey was the deputy at the FBI in 2005, and Robert Mueller was the director of the FBI in 2005. And as I told you in the last podcast, if any administration needs to be blamed for what happened with Jeffrey Epstein and the cover up of what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, it was George Bush and George Bush's administration. George Bush's administration, they're the ones who told Alex Acosta that this guy is intelligence and to leave it alone. They're the ones who gave Jeffrey Epstein the sweetheart plea deal in 2008. I think I said in a previous podcast that Jeffrey Epstein was under house arrest for a year and a half. It wasn't house arrest. It was basically he would report into the jail for 12 hours, and then he got to go home and live his life for 12 hours. That's the sweetheart plea deal that he got under George Bush. So if any administration, not the Trump administration today in 2025, 20 years ago in 2005, when Epstein was arrested the first time under this guy's administration, when Robert Mueller was the director of FBI and Comey was his deputy. And that's when Alex Acosta was told that he's intelligence and to let it go. And then he gets the sweetheart plea deal under the Bush administration. I want you to listen to this clip from Jake Tapper about what happened in 2005 when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested for the first time in the Bush administration.
Very beginning of this sordid affair, the fix has been in to protect the powerful at the expense of Epstein's victims. For example, the investigation started in 2005, when a woman reported that her high school-age stepdaughter received $300 in exchange for sexual activity at Epstein's Palm Beach mansion.
So that's how Epstein is first arrested in 2005, not because the FBI went out and did an investigation and found out what this guy was doing. He was working with the intelligence community. He's an intelligence asset. I've already explained that. But the reason that he got arrested is because a woman went and reported the fact that her stepdaughter got $300 from Epstein. Her underage minor stepdaughter got $300 from Epstein for sexual acts that she did at his house. So that opened up the investigation, which eventually gets Epstein arrested during the Bush administration, while Robert Mueller is the director of FBI.
At the expense of Epstein's victims. For example, the investigation started in 2005, when a woman reported that her high school-age stepdaughter received $300 in exchange for sexual activity at Epstein's Palm Beach mansion. Another teen in that investigation described recruiting other young girls for sexual activity with Epstein. Now, when police raided Epstein's Palm Beach mansion in 2005, somebody had already tipped Epstein off.
So after getting the report that this is in 2005 under the Bush administration, while Robert Mueller was the director of FBI, Alberto Gonzalez was the attorney general. This woman reports that her high school age daughter got $300 for sexual acts at Epstein's house there in Palm Beach, and the FBI from there, or I think it was the FBI. Who knows if it was local police or the FBI? There in Palm Beach, they raid his house. Before they raid his house, someone who tipped Epstein off. Someone tipped him off and said, "Hey, you need to get out of there. They're gonna raid your house, and you need to get out of there, and you need to take any incriminating evidence and get out of there." And that's what happened in 2005 under the Bush administration when Robert Mueller was the director of FBI.
Activity at Epstein's Palm Beach mansion. Another teen in that investigation described recruiting other young girls for sexual activity with Epstein. Now, when police raided Epstein's Palm Beach mansion in 2005, somebody had already tipped Epstein off. As the Florida detective who executed the search warrant told Miami Herald reporter Julie K. Brown for her book, Perversion of Justice, quote, 6 computer hard drives in the house had been hastily removed, leaving dangling wires.
6 hard drives removed. Someone tipped off Epstein, because he's an intelligence asset. Someone tipped him off with that they're getting ready to raid your house. You need to get out of there. He takes the hard drives, 6 hard drives from 6 computers that are connected to monitors. This confirms what Maria Farmer says in the clips that I played in past podcasts, that she saw the monitors in his home that he owned in Ohio on Wexner's property. And she saw the cameras, bedroom, bathroom. She saw the monitors with all the cameras that he's got all. What is he doing that for? Because I explained in the last podcast, he is collecting compromise on powerful people. And that was what he was as an intelligence asset. He would collect compromise on powerful people. So when he's arrested in 2005 and they raid his house, he broke out of there and took all the hard drives, all this evidence that from Compromise that he had collected on powerful people.
Attached to monitors in several areas of the house. Now, despite dozens of Epstein's victims being willing to testify about the heinous crimes Epstein committed, including multiple counts of statutory rape with girls as young as 14, Epstein facing a possible sentence of 10 years in prison to life. Regardless of that, in 2008, he entered into a sweetheart deal with the federal government.
In 2008, who's president in 2008? George W. Bush. Who's director of the FBI in 2008? Robert Mueller. Who's the attorney general in 2008? Alberto Gonzales. So someone tips him off that they're getting ready to raid your house in 2005 under the Bush administration. And then someone tells Alex Acosta, who is the DOJ attorney prosecuting him in 2008, or in the Bush administration, that he's intelligence, to leave it alone. And then in the Bush administration in 2008, just before Bush in his last months in office, then they give Epstein the sweetheart plea deal where he's allowed to go home for 12 hours a day. And, basically nothing else happens to him.
Epstein facing a possible sentence of 10 years in prison to life. Regardless of that, in 2008, he entered into a sweetheart deal with the federal government. He pleaded guilty to just 2 charges: procuring a person under 18 for prostitution and solicitation of prostitution. State charges, not federal charges. And that deal came under U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Alex Acosta. Now, Epstein spent only 13 months in jail for that conviction, spending at times 12 hours a day on work release, returning to his life of luxury when it was over. As for the victims, when going to police didn't work, many sought to sue him with civil lawsuits. Now, one of those victims included a woman whose name you've heard, Virginia Giuffre. Virginia Giuffre accused Epstein and Maxwell of raping her as a teen, grooming her to have sex with several powerful men. In 2015, in a sworn affidavit, Giuffre said, quote, "Epstein made me have sex with Prince Andrew several times," unquote. Now, Prince Andrew would go on to settle a lawsuit with Giuffre in 2022. He denies all allegations against him. And finally came an attempt at justice. On July 6, 2000.
And finally came an attempt at justice. Finally came an attempt at justice. So he gets the sweetheart plea deal under the Bush administration. Under the Bush administration, they tell Alex Acosta that this guy's intelligence, to leave it alone. Someone tips him off before his house is raided under the Bush administration. But finally, there comes an attempt at justice. Under whose administration is finally they're an attempt at justice, and Epstein is arrested again? That's under the Trump administration.
Allegations against him. And finally came an attempt at justice. On July 6, 2019, under the Trump administration, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested and charged with sex trafficking in Florida and New York, led by U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York, Jeffrey Berman.
There are dozens of victims as alleged in the indictment in New York and dozens in Florida, and it maintained itself over several years. So this is very significant.
Now, 2 weeks after Epstein's arrest, Alex Acosta, then the Secretary of Labor for President Trump and the guy who got the sweetheart deal for Epstein, Acosta resigned.
He didn't get the sweetheart plea deal for Epstein, Tapper. He was told that Epstein was intelligence and to leave it alone by the Bush administration. So that's how he got the sweetheart plea deal. And then Trump ends up arresting Epstein again in his first term. And then Alex Acosta under questions about why you let this guy off back in 2005, and the Bush administration started coming up, and then he resigns during the Trump administration.
For President Trump and the guy who got the sweetheart deal for Epstein, Acosta resigned, facing mounting questions about why Epstein did not face more significant charges 13 years earlier.
It's because the reason he didn't face more serious charges 13 years earlier is because the Bush administration told him that Epstein was intelligence and to leave it alone. And that's how he got the sweetheart plea deal. All right, so let's listen to Benny here from the Benny Show. and take a listen to what he says.
It was a wrap-up operation. The prosecution, Piers, was the cover-up.
Prosecution was
This
the cover-up.
was an opportunity for the federal government to seal something, not to expose something. This goes back 20 years. If you really want to get down to the true cover-up, and this is what makes my blood boil, that people inside of the current Trump administration are walking around with a dark cloud over them for a cover-up that happened 20 years ago when President Trump was a TV host. This was happening in 2005, 2006, 2007, and 2008 with Robert Mueller at the FBI, with Alberto Gonzales as our attorney general, and George W. Bush as our president. This is when Epstein actually properly caught his sweetheart deal. So sweet it'd give you diabetes type 2 fears.
Yeah, no, I know.
He was able to walk in and out of prison.
Outrageous.
He was dead to rights. Jeffrey Epstein should not be on the tip of anyone's tongue today. He should be rotting in a prison cell for life. Now, something dark happened then, 20 years ago nearly, and it had nothing to do with President Trump. No one on President Trump's team was in power.
Something very dark happened 20 years ago under the Bush administration when Comey was the deputy FBI director, when Mueller was the FBI director. Under the Bush administration, something very dark happened, is what Benny says. And he's right.
Something dark happened then, 20 years ago nearly, and it had nothing to do with President Trump. No one on President Trump's team was in power. And I know clips from my show, Kash Patel, have gone viral. Clips from your show, Alina Habba, has gone viral. But none of these people were in power. None of them should have to answer for the cover-up that happened 20 years ago. And
in the Bush administration, it happened under Bush. All right, so the Obamagate scandal and the Epstein scandal are the same scandal. These are scandals of our intelligence community. Epstein was an intelligence asset. And as you're getting ready to see, the Obamagate scandal is an intelligence. It's an intelligence operation that we have rogue intelligence agencies in the United States. And we need, quite frankly, we need a new church committee. And we're going to get into that here in a moment. The Office of Director of National Intelligence, DNI. The Office of Director of National Intelligence is an agency that was created after 9/11, post 9/11. And like I told you, Robert Mueller, he comes in just a few weeks before the 9/11 attacks happened. So he's there as a cleanup man to clean up all of the failed intelligence that didn't warn the United States government about what was about to happen with the 9/11 attacks. Completely bogus. They had the intelligence to prevent 9/11 if they wanted to prevent 9/11. There were tons of intelligence reports that showed that they had the intelligence. If they wanted to prevent 9/11, they could have prevented 9/11. But after 9/11, they said, oh, we couldn't connect the dots. Well, you couldn't connect the dots. What are you talking about? The dots are right there in front of your face. We couldn't connect the dots. So that's why they created the Office of Director of National Intelligence to oversee all of the intelligence agencies. So the dots will be connected in the future. There won't be any missing dots in the future. So that's why they created this Office of Director of National Intelligence. And this is the office that Tulsi Gabbard is. She is the Secretary of Director of National Intelligence now, and she oversees all 18 agencies in the intelligence community. Before 9/11, there wasn't this office, and basically all of the agencies, the 17 agencies at that time, were all independent agencies. So after 9/11, one of the FBI directors, from talking about them having created, so what I'm getting into right now is to tell you that the creation of this office, the Director of National Intelligence, they didn't need this office. They didn't need someone overseeing all the intelligence agencies to connect the dots, the pre-intelligence prior to 9/11. And I'm going to show you proof of that. One, bit of evidence comes from whistleblowers. And there's two things you got to understand and that we're going to get into now is leaks and whistleblowers. There's whistleblowers who come out, they publicly state what they know. And then there's also leaks that came out after 9/11 that showed that the Director of National Intelligence was a useless agency, that these guys had all the intelligence that they needed to prevent 9/11 if they wanted to. And one of these whistleblowers is Colleen Raleigh. She was part of the FBI field team in Minneapolis. And she comes out as a whistleblower after 9/11 stating what I just told you, that we had all the intelligence to stop the 9/11 attacks if we wanted to. And then she writes this letter to Congress, and this is the letter. Just read a little bit of it. She addresses it to Robert Mueller, but I said that she wrote it to Congress. She addresses the letter to Robert Mueller, but it also goes to Congress. And then you can see here in the picture when Patrick Leahy, who was the head of the Intelligence or Judiciary Committee back then, brings her in to testify. Let's read a little bit of this. FBI agent Colleen Raleigh shocked America when she wrote to the Bureau Director Robert Mueller, accusing the FBI headquarters of setting up roadblocks to the investigation prior to September 11. Her letter centered on handling of information regarding the Zacharias Moussaoui arrest which happened in Minneapolis, in her field office, the alleged 20th hijacker, and following are excerpts from her letter. Dear Robert Mueller, dear Director Mueller, I feel at this point I have to put my concerns in writing. The issues are fundamentally ones of integrity and go to the heart of the FBI's law enforcement mission and mandate. To get to the point, I have deep concerns that there is a delicate and subtle skewing of facts by you, Robert Mueller, and others at the highest levels of the FBI management has occurred and is occurring. She said that you guys are covering up, writing this letter to Robert Mueller, the cleanup man that came in just a few weeks before 9/11 to cover up for what Louis Freeh was doing. She says that you guys are covering up, is what she says in this letter. All right, so Colleen Raleigh comes out as a whistleblower, blaming them of a cover-up. And then someone leaks. I told you, whistleblowers and leaks. Then someone from the CIA leaks a presidential daily brief that George Bush received at his Crawford Ranch a month before 9/11. The title of this intelligence brief. Now, this is for someone to leak the presidential daily brief, this is a huge deal. This is one of the most secure pieces of intelligence, like Dick Cheney said after the fact that we shouldn't even be talking about this. After this was leaked and he was asked about it in interviews, he's like, we shouldn't even be talking about this piece of intelligence. This is one of the most secure pieces of intelligence in all of the security apparatus, the Presidential Daily Brief, the PDB. We're going to talk more about a PDB that was composed, that was supposed to go to Barack Obama here in a moment, but they memory hold that. But this one, Bush actually got this presidential daily brief at his Crawford Ranch on August 6th, 2001, a month before 9/11. And someone leaks this to the American people. It was declassified during the 2004 9/11 commission. When this leak first comes out, and you see the title, it's titled, Bin Laden Determined to Strike in the United States, was the title of this brief that George Bush got a month before 9/11. After this leak happens, the Bush administration lies to the American people and says that this title of this report was Bin Laden Determined to Strike the United States, not in the United States, the United States. And then Condoleezza Rice comes out and she lies to the American people and says that this report was about, attacks that Al-Qaeda was planning overseas on our bases, on our overseas asset. And they said that it wasn't in the United States, that it was Bin Laden determined to attack the United States, which was a lie. And then after it's declassified in 2004, we see that they're lying and we see what's exactly in this report. So what I'm trying to get you to understand is they had all the intelligence to stop 9/11 if they wanted to stop 9/11. This is the same administration that's covering up for Jeffrey Epstein. Bin Laden Determined to Strike in the United States is a presidential daily brief prepared by the Central Intelligence Agencies, which was given to President George W. Bush on Monday, August 6, 2001. The brief warned 36 days before the September 11 attacks of terrorism threats of Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, including quote, patterns of suspicious activity in this country, consistent with preparations for hijacking aircraft. They knew. George Bush knew that they were going to hijack planes and that they were preparing to hijack planes. What did George Bush do? Nothing. Well, I find it very strange that after 9/11, George Bush, unilaterally, through the FAA, he implements a policy that is still in place today that all the cockpit doors in commercial aircrafts must be locked while in flight. If George Bush, when he got this report 36 days before 9/11, if he would have implemented unilaterally through his FAA that policy that he implemented after 9/11, that the cockpit doors should be locked while in flight, just that action alone would have prevented 9/11. But George Bush gets this report 36 days before 9/11, and he does nothing. His administration does nothing. So the idea that you need a DNI, Director of National Intelligence, an office to create an office of Director of National Intelligence to connect the dots, to put all the intelligence together because we missed something, is ridiculous. They didn't miss anything. They ignored, Colleen Raleigh said, they ignored intelligence that could have prevented 9/11. They ignored the presidential daily brief that warned them that hijackers were about to hijack planes. It was Louis Freeh, not Robert Mueller, but Louis Freeh ignored the Phoenix memo that a FBI agent in Arizona saw that Muslims were taking flight lessons at this flight school, and they didn't care to learn how to land. This was given to the FBI in July of 2010, just before Louis Freeh resigns. And they had all the intelligence they needed to stop 9/11 if they wanted to stop 9/11. You didn't need an office of Director of National Intelligence to prevent 9/11. They didn't want to prevent 9/11. So this is all happening in the Bush administration. And so in the last podcast, what I'm telling you, again, reiterate that the Obamagate scandal and the Epstein scandal is the same scandal. This is a scandal of our intelligence community. This is a scandal of rogue elements in our intelligence community. And again, the intelligence community says that we need them to protect us from all these foreign threats. Again, who's protecting us from them? Who's protecting us from these rogue elements within our intelligence community? Because that's what we need. And frankly, it brought up the church committee hearings from the 1970s. In the last podcast, we desperately need a new church committee hearing. We desperately need a new investigations into our intelligence and rogue elements in our intelligence community, because this is the huge scandal. And not only our intelligence community, the media works closely with the intelligence community to create these scandals. The media is the reason that the Obamagate, they helped Obama perpetuate this scandal, the Obamagate scandal. The media helped the cover up of Jeffrey Epstein. The media is heavily involved in the rogue actions of the intelligence community. And we find out about Operation Mockingbird in the church committee hearings. This is where we learn that the CIA and members of the intelligence community work closely with the media. They not only work closely with the media, they have members of the intelligence community in these corporations writing stories, advising on stories in the media. So the media is responsible for these rogue elements within the intelligence community. If you remember a couple of podcasts ago, I played the clip of Claire Danes, who's the star of the Showtime show Homeland, which is about the CIA. And she does this interview with Stephen Colbert where she is talking about how, actors from the show, producers from the show, they meet with the CIA in Georgetown and they talk about tradecraft. They talk about all these things, to give them insights for the show. And she says she's not supposed to say, and Stephen Colbert freaks out and tries to change the subject immediately when she says that we learned from these CIA agents that we were meeting with for the show that they work closely with the media. I want you to listen to what she says here again.
Yeah, so we park ourselves in a club in Georgetown and talk to, like, real spooks. And, people in the intelligence community and the State Department and journalists and people who really...
What do they tell you that, like, what's the most surprising thing that they've told you about their jobs or something you would need to know from
Well, every year it's different, right? We've been at it for a while, and the climate has changed. But this year it was all about, the distrust between the administration and the intelligence world. And
so this year it changes every year. We've been meeting with them forever, as long as this show's been running. I think the show ran for 13 seasons. She said this year it's different. This year was about the distrust between the president of the United States, the distrust between the executive branch, the president of the United States who's elected by the American people, the distrust between that person who at this time in 2018, when she's giving this interview, was Donald Trump, the distrust between the intelligence community and the president of the United States. That's what it was about, our meeting from the Homeland show and us meeting with these spooks in Georgetown. That's what our conversation was about this year in 2018, the distrust between the executive branch and the intelligence community.
Right? We've been at it for a while, and the climate has changed. But this year it was all about, the distrust between the administration and the intelligence world, and the intelligence community was suddenly kind of allying itself with journalists.
And the intelligence community was allying itself with journalists. The intelligence community was allying itself with journalists. You don't say, Claire.
This year it was all about, the distrust between the administration and the intelligence world, and the intelligence community was suddenly kind of allying itself with journalists, which usually they're not.
So she says, they're allying themselves with journalists, which usually they're not. What do you mean usually they're not? What are you talking about? The intelligence community, particularly the CIA, has been allying themselves with journalists, for decades. That's what we learned in the Church Committee, Operation Mockingbird. That's what we learned, that the intelligence community has been allying themselves with journalists and been allying themselves with the media and the press. That's part of their tradecraft. That's what they do. So she comes out and says that, and Stephen Colbert immediately wants to change the subject because she wasn't supposed to say that. This is a former CIA former CIA agent who worked with the CIA in the 1970s during the Vietnam War, in 1960s, 1970, during the Vietnam War. And he's doing this interview talking about how the CIA used the press to plant stories during the Vietnam War. Why don't you listen to what he says?
When we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the brief.
He says the CIA wants to circulate disinformation. This is what we would do when we wanted to circulate disinformation.
CIA wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing hope.
Oh my God, I can't believe that I haven't scratched the surface, and I can't believe that I'm almost done with this podcast. I haven't even gotten to anything.
And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
So we would pick out a journalist. We want to circulate information. So we would pick out a journalist, and we would go and spread this disinformation and give it to the journalist as this. So I'm a CIA agent. I'm giving you this secret anonymous. I'm not going to go on the record. I'm an anonymous source for you, anonymous source. And I'm going to give you this information, and you're going to go print this information from your anonymous CIA source. This is how we would spread disinformation is what this former CIA director said.
Circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography.
Yeah, so basically what he's saying is that I would give this information to the journalist as a anonymous source. There's no way for the journalist to go and check and to do the research on the information that I'm giving him. So the journalist either has to print this information from this anonymous source or not. And oftentimes the journalists would print the information. So that's one part of their tradecraft in using the media and using journalists to spread disinformation and to feed stories to the journalists. But we learned from the Church Committee, not only is that method being used, that the CIA and the intelligence community, Operation Mockingbird, had actual agents, actual members of the intelligence community working as journalists in these press, in these media corporations and in these press rooms, actual agents from the intelligence community, the ones that are writing the stories, quite frankly. Take a listen. This is from the Church Committee in 1974.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have...
This is William Comey, and he's testifying that we do. He's the director of Central Intelligence. He's saying we have members of the CIA that are working in these press rooms that are contributing to these articles and to these journals. The director of Central Intelligence saying that this is Operation Mockingbird. This is why when Nixon comes in, he fires William Comey and replaces William Comey with George H.W. Bush, because William Comey gives up all of this information, the family jewels, on what the CIA was doing. And then Bush comes in and they cover everything up, and they're completely unforthcoming with the Senate and with Congress after William Comey was open with them. That's why Nixon brings George H.W. Bush in to cover up what William Comey had done. And what you need to understand too is that there were no, like, people keep talking about the Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee. There were no ongoing intelligence committees in the House and the Senate before the Church Committee. The Church Committee and the exposure that we got from the Church Committee and the Pike committees in the House, that led Congress to say that, look, we need ongoing oversight over the intelligence agencies, because these rogue intelligence agencies and what they had done in the 50s and 60s, we need ongoing oversight. So that's when we had the permanent House Intelligence Committee and the permanent Senate Intelligence Committee were created after the Church and Pike committees, because of the exposure that we got from what these rogue members of these intelligence communities were doing in the 50s and 60s.
To a major circulation American journal.
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
That's a yes. That's a yes. Do you have, he says, they ask him a question. Do you have members of the CIA who are working in these press rooms, contributing to these articles and to these journals? He says, yes. Do you have any members of the CIA working in these newsrooms on television? Any CIA members of the CIA who are anchors at these news stations? He says, I don't answer that in public. This is something that we need to get into in private, is what William Covey says. The answer to that question is yes. So these rogue members of the intelligence community are working closely with the press. This is how they get these stories out and to spread misinformation and disinformation, because they use the press. In comes this week a Wall Street Journal article that says that the reason that Donald Trump is not releasing the Epstein files is because he was told in May that he's in the files. They don't have any sources for this story in the Wall Street Journal. No one is on the record saying that, yes, I'm going to go on the record. This is a very serious issue about Jeffrey Epstein. I'm going to go on the record and say that yes, Donald Trump was told in May by the Attorney General that he was in the files, and that's why Trump is not releasing it. No, it's all unnamed sources, all anonymous sources in this Wall Street Journal article, hearsay, misinformation, disinformation, and this becomes the story. And everyone is saying that Tulsi Gabbard is bringing up the Obamagate scandal to cover up for Epstein and for Trump not releasing the Epstein. I'm telling you, it's the other way around. That now the Wall Street Journal is coming out with this article because they want to cover up for the Obamagate scandal, because it's the same scandal. The Obamagate scandal and the Epstein scandal, they're the same scandal. So the Wall Street Journal comes out. Well, first, Tulsi Gabbard comes out and releases all this information about Obamagate and what Obama was doing in committing treason and tried to commit a coup d'etat on Donald Trump after he won in 2016. And then all of a sudden, Wall Street Journal comes out with this article. Oh, the reason that Donald Trump's not releasing the Epstein files is because he was told in May that he's in the file. Well, who told you that, Wall Street Journal? What are your sources for that? Oh, I can't say what the sources are. Anonymous sources. You see how this works, people?
Now to the growing fallout of the Jeffrey Epstein files. And it turns out Attorney General Pam Bondi briefed President Trump several months ago that his name was in the Epstein files.
So listen to how everyone's reporting. Turns out that Trump is in the Epstein files. Turns out that Pam Bondi briefed him of this in May. That may be true, and it may not be true. You have anonymous sources. You're not relieving. I mean, I'm supposed to take your word for it because you have these anonymous sources, Wall Street Journal? No, this is a cover-up. That's why the story came out in the Wall Street Journal. And there's no evidence that this actually happened, that Pam Bondi briefed Donald Trump that he's in the files in May and that Trump is actually in the files and that's why he's not releasing him. There's no evidence of that. But everyone in the media is just running with it because of this Wall Street Journal report that's coming from unnamed sources. Do you see how this works?
Fallout of the Jeffrey Epstein files. And it turns out Attorney General Pam Bondi briefed President Trump several months ago that his name was in the Epstein files several times. Tonight, the Wall Street Journal reporting that Attorney General Pam Bondi and her deputy, Todd Blanche, informed President Trump in May that his name appears multiple times in the Epstein files.
So the Wall Street Journal is reporting this. No sources. No one's on the record saying that from the Trump administration, this is all unnamed sources, leaks. Who knows if this is true? This is what they do. And they're covering up for themselves because, again, the Obamagate scandal and the Epstein scandal are the same scandals. This is a scandal of our intelligence community. Folks, I can't believe I didn't really even get to the meat of what I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to play this last clip. This goes into a little bit of the accusations that Tulsi Gabbard is making now as the director of national intelligence and the documents that she is declassifying that proves what she is saying about the Obamagate scandal and why she has recommended not only Obama, but members of the Obama administration for criminal prosecution for what they did to Donald Trump in 2016. Take a listen.
President Trump today calling out former President Obama after DNI Tulsi Gabbard sent a criminal referral to the DOJ related to her claims that Obama-era officials manufactured and politicized intelligence to create the Russia collusion narrative in 2016. Intelligence that those officials have said they had great confidence in.
John Brennan and Jim Comey and I are part of the group that...
Clapper. James Clapper was the director of national intelligence, the DNI, same job that Tulsi Gabbard has now. He was the DNI under the Obama administration.
Intelligence that those officials have said they had great confidence in.
John Brennan and Jim Comey and I are part of the group that were tasked by President Obama to put together all the reporting we had on the Russian...
Tasked by President Obama. Obama tasked us to do this report. He told us to do it, is what Clapper says.
And Jim Comey and I are part of the group that were tasked by President Obama to put together all the reporting we had on the Russian interference, and which we did. And then, of course, on January 6th, we issued our intelligence community assessment documenting the Russian interference, in which we had very high confidence in the evidence that we presented.
Yeah, you guys didn't all have very high confidence. The NSA didn't have confidence in it. So this is the report. I told you about this report a couple of weeks ago when they first announced that they were doing this investigation on Comey and Brennan, and January 6th, this is the day that they put this out. So this is the assessment. I told you, I've read this assessment. You should go and read it yourself. It's complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. So this is the assessment that Clapper's talking about there. And this is that's the assessment that Tulsi Gabbard is exposing now.
In which we had very high confidence in the evidence that we presented.
Gabbard also teeing up that there will be more declassified documents coming this week. Ahead of that, here's what we've learned so far. December 7th, 2016, the assessment reiterated that Russia did not tamper with election infrastructure. Just one day later, the editor of that assessment canceled the brief, quote, based on new guidance. By December 9th.
So when she says canceled the brief here, this is the presidential daily brief. We talked about the presidential daily brief that Bush got in 36 days before 9/11, titled Bin Laden Determined to Strike in the United States. So this was an intelligence brief to Obama, presidential daily brief that they had composed, basically telling Obama that there was no Russian interference, that Russia didn't do all the things that this assessment says that Russia did do. And then they scrapped the intelligence brief to Obama based on new guidance. New guidance, huh?
Assessment canceled the brief, quote, based on new guidance. By December 9th, 2016, Obama convened National Security Council principals and ordered a new assessment. And on January 6, 2017, the new unclassified assessment was released.
All right. So this is the assessment that came out on January 6th, and it was the product of the FBI, the CIA, James Comey's FBI, John Brennan's CIA. Mike Rogers was the head of the NSA, and he gave some of this report moderate confidence, not high confidence, and then Clapper, the DNI. But they told us over and over again, that all 17 agencies of the intelligence community were responsible for this report. Why? I've told you that they did so to give this report credibility, because there's no evidence in the report. And if the American people understood that this report came from Brennan's CIA, from James Comey's FBI, and those are the only agencies that were responsible for this report, including the DNI and NSA, nobody was going to believe this report without any evidence. So they told us over and over again that it was all 17 agencies. All 17 agencies.
Come from the highest levels of the Russian government, clearly from Putin himself, in an effort, as 17 of our intelligence agencies have confirmed, to influence our election.
Was the consensus of all the intelligence agencies?
All the intelligence agencies,
Obama.
Our nation's 17 federal intelligence agencies.
Oh, 17 agencies. 17 agencies.
Came to a consensus conclusion.
17 agencies.
17
agencies.
intelligence agencies.
The intelligence communities have concluded, all 17 of them,
17 agencies,
that Russia interfered with this election. And we all know how that's right.
I am not quoting myself.
No idea.
I am quoting
Hillary, you have no idea.
17 agencies. 17 agencies.
Our country has no idea.
So you got to understand, too, that this debate between Hillary Clinton and Trump, this happens before the January 6th assessment. So where's she getting this from? Where are they all getting this from? That it was all 17 agencies responsible for this report.
Our country has no idea.
There were only 3 agencies that directly involved in this assessment.
Yeah, so then Clapper has to admit it was only 3 agencies, not all 17. And this is the Obamagate scandal. And we'll have to get back into this on Monday because I didn't even scratch the surface in all that I have to share on Obamagate. This is a huge scandal. The Obamagate scandal and the Epstein scandal, it's the same scandal. This is a scandal of rogue elements of our intelligence community. And folks, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. Who's protecting us from the intelligence community is the question that I have. Thank you guys for joining me, and have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.